All right, thanks, Jen. Well, this court case has garnered national attention. It's the retrial on Friday. Well, the retrial ended on Wednesday when a jury found Karen Reed not guilty of murdering her boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, in 2022.
This after Reed's first murder trial ended in a mistrial. Maribel Gonzalez breaks down Wednesday's verdict and the public reaction now to her acquittal, including Reed's very own reaction.
With a smile on her face, Karen Reed walked out of a Massachusetts courtroom Wednesday saying, "I love you" in American Sign Language. She was met with a crowd of cheers from her supporters, who have echoed her claims of innocence during both of Reed's murder trials.
No one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have and my team.
Reed was accused of drunkenly striking John O'Keefe, her then off-duty police officer boyfriend, and leaving him to die in January 2022. But following 4 days of deliberation, a jury acquitted her of second-degree murder and of leaving the scene.
What say you? Is the defendant at the bar guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
The jury did find her guilty of drunk driving. During closing arguments, both parties laid out their case.
This case was corrupted from the start, and most fatally, it was corrupted by a lead investigator whose misconduct infected every single part of this case, from the top to the bottom.
Anger, although not necessary in any of these charges, anger can be inferred. For somebody to come back that hard, that fast, that reckless, that obvious, likely to create a plain and strong likelihood of death.
Reed will serve 1 year of probation for the conviction of drunk driving, but no jail time. I'm Maribel Gonzalez reporting.
So we have criminal attorney Adam Ashby in studio with us this morning, taking a deeper dive into this case and the jury's decision as well.
All right, so Adam, thank you so much for coming in, because I mean, this one is the talk of not just the town, the entire nation. So pretty interesting, because leading up to the verdict, it was like deja vu. Everything we were seeing was happening for the second time. So what was your reaction when they came back with their not guilty verdict?
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't surprised. The jury came back with the right verdict. Whether or not you believe she was guilty or innocent, you have to believe in the process of how our Constitution is built and how our country understands the right to due process, also the right to be proved guilty and not to prove yourself innocent. And so I know that the jury had a lot of questions, there was a lot of confusion, but I believe they got to the right answer in the end.
I am just surprised by the amount of people, well, the people that were outside that courthouse that were just cheering for her, supporting her.
Yeah.
How does that come into play in a trial like this? I mean, look at all these people.
All in pink.
Yeah, all in pink, supporting her, yeah.
Anytime I've represented somebody and the public gets involved, or the TikTok gets involved, Instagram gets involved, it gets very difficult, especially because you don't want to influence the jury in certain ways. You want to make sure that things are fair for better or for worse, right? Obviously, we believe that this probably impacted the jury in the way for Karen Reed. But it makes it difficult when the public gets involved and there's people outside, and hundreds of people, they're still outside the courtroom to this day, you know, so it's a difficult thing to manage, you know, having to make sure that the jury goes through different doors and that they're never influenced or talked or seen or identified. So it gets difficult, but I think they managed it fairly well. What
do you have to do differently as an attorney? Is there anything that you have to do specifically?
To protect the jury?
Yeah, I mean, and just like in the case, when you have that amount of pressure, I mean, obviously there's pressure on you, but now you just have all these people that are watching you as well.
It just depends on whose side you're on, right? Honestly, I bet that the defense probably wanted the jury to see all the support that they had. But what if it was the other way around, right? The defense wants to isolate the jury to not have negative pressure on them, to be like, wow, if these hundreds of people outside think she's guilty, then I probably have to think that, or vice versa, right? So you have to be very careful one way or another.
I did like the fact that Karen Reed said to her supporters, silence. When the family comes in, show some respect, because it was a pretty big group. But you said that you felt they made the right verdict. So that means you were convinced yourself by some of the evidence. What do you think the most pivotal pieces of evidence were?
Well, I want to correct you on one thing. I don't think I was convinced of some of the evidence. I was not convinced that there was enough evidence.
Okay.
Which is the way that we have our Constitution established, right? It's
Preponderance of the evidence. Yeah.
guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, right? They have to be able to prove to you that she did it. And I don't think that they even ever got close to that. So believing that she's not guilty is not the same thing as believing she's innocent. Right, and I don't even mean to get into that type of conversation, but I don't believe that the Commonwealth even got close to showing that she actually did anything.
Were you surprised that they didn't call Proctor? Because obviously, if you don't follow the case, Michael Proctor was the lead investigator. He was actually let go from the department after an internal investigation revealed what his text messages and maybe some mistakes that they feel he made. And yet, in the first trial, they called him and lambasted him while he was testifying. This trial, the Commonwealth didn't call him, but I was convinced the defense was going to call him since he makes their case for corruption. Did it surprise you that neither side actually called him?
It speaks volume that the Commonwealth didn't ask him to testify, didn't call him to the witness stand. And Alan Jackson proved that perfectly in his closing statement, saying, you don't get to hear from him. What does that tell you? And I think that silence was extremely loud when it came to that. He was able to introduce the text messages. He was able to introduce a lot of the things that Michael Proctor did or didn't do. And so he didn't need him. He didn't need him. And the fact that they didn't call him, I think, was extremely damning for them, for the Commonwealth. And it was extremely loud for him to be able to say, their lead investigator, they didn't call to the stand. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. What about the judge? So it was pretty interesting on the final couple days that the jury kept coming back with, if we find one way on charge 1, one way on charge 2, if we don't have an agreement on charge 3, does that mean we're hung? And the judge responded back that it was a hypothetical and she couldn't answer that. And then obviously the defense went bananas because it's exactly what we saw in the first trial. Yep. And all the legal experts I was reading about said the judge was instructed to give legal advice, not an opinion. So the jury instructions seemed really confusing because they're not legal experts. They're just normal people like us that are trying to understand a very confusing, ballot. So what did you think of the judge's actions?
Yeah, Judge Cannoni kind of rested on the morals of, well, if I give an opinion or I give legal interpretation here, then it's going to sway the jury one way or another. And then she also mentioned we can't weigh in on whether or not she's going to be sentenced a certain way, one way or the other as well, right? So she kind of rested on that and didn't give her official opinion, which was what they needed because those jury instructions were not clear. They were difficult to follow, starting from second-degree murder all the way down to the other. The intent changes, the mens rea changes, whether or not they're involved changes. I mean, it's a very complicated process, and they needed some help for sure. You could tell that they were confused.
Couldn't she have just said, yes, you can return a partial verdict?
Yeah. I have a hard time criticizing a sitting judge, right? I want to be safe on that, but I think that she could have done a little bit better of job, or at least taken a minute, consulted some people and said, how should I do this properly, right? And I think that probably would have been a good idea.
What do you think, why this case? Why do you think this case just became so popular? With the HBO docuseries on it, like when did you see this kind of getting traction? Why do you think that hundreds of people showing up outside the courtroom?
People love conspiracy, right? They want to know whether or not the accusations that there was police planting evidence. They want to know whether or not Judge Cannoni was involved in the conspiracy. They want to know if these 15 to 20 people that were inside this house were all involved in this conspiracy together. Why did they sell their home? Why did they rehome their dog? All of these things create great titles for potential conspiracy.
Yeah, because there are a lot of things that make you go, in this case.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, now that she has been vindicated, and she has always said that, her right after when she came out, that she has been the biggest proponent in finding justice for John O'Keefe. So does that mean the Commonwealth is now going to open up the investigation and maybe talk to some of the people that they didn't talk to on the first investigation? Or do you think they're just going to close the books on this and say, we're done?
There have been some unofficial statements that I've read from the district attorney, from a couple different investigators, stating that they believe they found the killer and they believe that it was Karen Reed, and so that they're not going to open the investigation. But district attorneys don't stay forever. Maybe the next district attorney changes that. Maybe they'll open up the investigation later on in the future. But based on what I've read, I believe that they're closing the investigation and saying that she got away with it.
Yeah, even though the criminal side is done for now, there's still a civil case pending. How much do you think the civil wrongful death case that the family of John O'Keefe has filed against Karen Reed, does it change anything now that she has been found not guilty by a criminal jury?
Well, I don't think it changes anything, right? The most famous case that we can look back to was on the O.J. Simpson. Yeah, I mean, he was found not guilty in his criminal trial, and then in the civil trial, he was found liable for the death of those two people, and he was ordered to give millions of dollars to the family. They could do the exact same thing in this case against her. It will be wild. It's going to be years more of litigation. I will be surprised if they move forward without a settlement. I believe that if Alan Jacks has anything to do with it, they'll probably go the distance and go to trial as well. Obviously, there's a lower burden of proof. And so they could do that. They could move forward, but who knows? Only time will tell.
It's just so interesting because, I mean, if you have a criminal jury saying not guilty, I understand it's easier to get 7 on a civil jury. And so it's the polar opposite with the OJ. But it's going to be interesting. I don't think this case is over yet.
No, I don't think so either.
All right. Wow. Great talking with you.
Yeah. Adam Ashby, thanks you for coming in, doing the deep dive with us.
Can we do a part 2?
I'd love to.
I got so many
She wants a part 3 as well.
I know. A little obsessed with it. All right. Thank you.